cost of living for everybody. I mean, it's really difficult for teachers to find a place to live. It's difficult for our students. If you look at the community college system, for example, I know we've got a lot of community college members. We've actually found now, a study just came out, this is fascinating. If you're a low-income kid who's not living at home, it's more expensive for you to go to community college than to go to the University of California or to go to a decent private university. Because the UC and the private schools actually have a decent wraparound set of financial aid options for you with regards to room and board. But of course, for community college, because you have this enormous cost, it's actually not the fees that are killing kids. It's the housing, right? It's just the cost of living. We've gotten one of the very worst housing affordability ratios in the nation, in the LA area, right? If you look at our salaries and you look at our housing costs. So that's a big problem. We're trying to work on early childhood issues. We all know, if you look at the studies, it's the best place to invest, bar none, in terms of long-term output for kids. And yet, that's of course where we have arguably the least amount of investment. Everyone gets a free education starting at age 5, but before that, it's kind of a blank slate. And you got, the poorest of the poor are able to access certain programs. The wealthiest are able to access programs because they have the money to pay for it. But everybody in the middle is totally squeezed, right? It's incredibly expensive. Anyone who's had a kid recently knows how incredibly expensive it is just to give your kid a decent place, a decent preschool experience. And that's another issue that we've got to get our heads around. A lot of the debate here in the building is dominated by the perennial clash between the teachers union and the charter schools. And that is just a battle royale here. And I'm sure Scott can speak to that as well. It's a little funny sometimes to me because I think it actually gets a little away from some of the core on-the-ground issues that I knew and experienced as a school board member, and I know with my teachers and colleagues and friends who work in education. I think that ultimately my vision and with regards to charter schools is that we build upon what the core goal of the program was in the first place, which was to allow some schools to go off and do their own thing, and then they were laboratories of sorts, where you'd be able to learn from them, get a sense of the best practices, and then figure out ways to try to scale the best practices across the system. The vast majority of our kids are not in charter schools. They're in district public schools. And yet somehow the battle here kind of becomes, if you were to hear the way some people talk, you'd think that it was sort of this existential battle between these two visions that are totally irreconcilable. And I actually think that there's a lot more there's a lot more that we can, there's a lot more common ground that should exist than it seems to exist when you just pay attention to the political battle. But I'm happy to talk about that as well. I'm someone who thinks there's some great charter schools. I also think there's some poor ones out there. We've got to learn from the good ones. We've got to figure out ways to hold the poor ones more accountable. And we've got to figure out ways that we can trade best practices. There's not enough real communication going on between our mainstream district public schools and our charter schools. Funding is, of course, the elephant in the room. We are always trying to figure out ways to get more money to our schools. Depending on how you read it, our California schools were sort of in the 40s in terms of out of the 50 states in terms of our per pupil spending for kids, and it's just hard to do everything that we know that we need to do for our kids when we're spending so much less per student compared to states like Rhode Island and Vermont, New Hampshire, New York, some of the states that we consider ourselves peers with. And one of the interesting things is people don't realize we've got one of the highest poverty rates in the country in California. And I represent the west side of LA and the coastal South Bay, and a lot of folks in my area don't kind of get that, they don't understand it. But you go to some parts of the state, and the poverty levels are just on par with some of the highest poverty rates in the country, in the deep south and other places. And that really does add additional challenges to putting together a strong educational system for our state. There is a total correlation, and as much as we try to break it, it's been so hard to break, but there's such a correlation, unfortunately, between socioeconomic status and academic outcomes. And it has been shown over and over and over again. And there's certainly some schools out there that are breaking that model, but on a grand scale, it's proven incredibly difficult to break. And that comes from so many different things, right? If your parents don't have a college degree or a high school diploma, you're so much more likely to show up at school the very first day of kindergarten with a much reduced vocabulary, with much less numeracy skills, with much less literacy skills. The average kid who comes from a family with a professional background versus one where they only went to, where the parents went to high school, is literally double the vocabulary the day they set foot on campus in kindergarten. And that gap just continues to grow as time goes on. And by the way, if you want to have any sense of how dangerous this trend is, we base our 20-year prison construction needs on third grade literacy rates because it's so damn predictive. So it just underscores how important it is that we try to crack some of these nuts. I'd love to open the floor to questions, and I'm happy to talk about anything and everything. And Scott will want to chime in as well.
No, just you. Okay, questions? Questions? Give it to him. Come on. There you go. Senator.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. All right. So these are troublemakers?
Yes.
One of them. I'm not telling you which one you can figure out on your own.
Yeah.
Wanted to start by asking
Introduce yourself.
again.
Yes.
Mary Angela with the Williams Park High School District. I wanted to talk a little bit about sustainability.
Yeah.
We have been the benefactors of wonderful grants. We've definitely taken full advantage of the grant funding that's made available to us. And we have expensive programs. We like to be sustainable. We'd like to not lay off teachers and go through all those horrible things that you just finished describing. And in technical education, our programs are just expensive. And so for us to continue to sustain those programs, I'm wondering if there's any discussion at all at this point happening about long-term funding, right, beyond the grant funding that's currently in place.
For career technical ed in particular? Okay, all right. First of all, the funding system in general is sort of wild and fluctuative and a little schizophrenic. And I think one of the reasons why it was really important that we passed the rainy day fund was that will create at least some semblance of stability. It's not big enough to really tide us over during a major multi-year economic downturn, but at the very least it will cushion a blow in a way that we never had before. And I will say that this governor, he can be frustrating for both sides of the aisle from time to time, but he is somebody who is acutely aware of the boom and bust economic cycle that we have, and the fact that our state revenues are so dependent upon the market and other fluctuating factors. And he's someone who said, look, we've never had 6 or 7 years of uninterrupted economic growth, even though it feels as though we're just coming out of the recession right now. In fact, we've actually had uninterrupted growth since 2009, 2010, which is unprecedented, right? Year after year after year of growth. And his fear is that that we're kind of set for some sort of downturn at some point. So it's why he's so careful, as frustrating as that can be for those of us in education who know how many programs need support. Look, I think that CTE has been an area. So CTE is career technical education, and it's an area that we all know needs much more investment. I think there's a lot of different things. We're going to be talking a lot about trying to align the system a little bit better between our K-12 and our community colleges. There's not enough conversation, and I'm hoping that maybe even you will be able to kind of have some of those conversations on trips, so that we're better aligned in articulating that experience of the kid who's moving their way through the system. Maybe doesn't need to go get a graduate degree, but could use really good training both in high school and then in college for a more manual degree that actually pays well, an infrastructural need that we have as a society. So we've got this kind of career technical education innovation grant program that now exists. I think you sort of alluded to it, and it basically encourages the creation and expansion of high-quality CTE programs during the school district's implementation of the LCFF, which is our newfangled, bright, shiny school funding system. And this new grant program is, I think, $900 million over the next 2 years. So it's very substantial, and you should definitely, and if you're not already, I'm sure you're applying for those grants and working for them. Now, there was kind of a special priority system that was set up that for those districts that are trying to establish new CTE programs to give them some seed money. Those districts that have special challenges like particularly high dropout rates and areas of high unemployment or operating programs within rural school districts. So some of the folks in kind of northern reaches of the county will probably be able to take advantage of that. Now, the governor's proposed budget for this year proposes $200 million, which is the final installment of funding for this 3-year program. And then his plan, at least, is that schools will then start to support the full cost of these programs within the LCFF funds, which I think is deeply problematic. It's kind of a classic, you know. Now, this is like, so the way the governor operates, and I've come to understand the wisdom of his system from his perspective, but the way the government operates is that you've got so many mouths at the trough here, right? This was a group that cares about education. I could fill up an equally impassioned group that cares about fixing our roads, or dealing with, the prisons, or, some sort of parks, the state park system, or, fixing the elections process. Well, you name it. There's an issue that needs more support from the state. And what the governor typically does with his first budget is he lowballs everything and then forces everybody to fight for their piece of the pie. And he kind of sees, okay, how hard are they going to fight? How hard are they going to push the legislature? How hard are they going to push me? How hard are they going to really get their way and kind of push through? And I think in an era, in a system of limited resources, that makes a lot of sense. It can be exasperating, frustrating, and annoying, right? To have to deal with this year after year. But he's essentially forcing you and us, those of us who care about the bottom lines for school districts, to push back and say, look, we really got to re-up this grant. We've got to stop because ultimately this what you're doing is essentially what you're complaining about the federal government doing on healthcare, which is to basically start slowly, create this grand program and then kind of pull the rug from under people.
So may I just add one thing? I think that will speak to everyone.
Yeah.
Is it's not, and forgive me, but CTE is what my heart is, so of course I'm going to lobby on behalf of that. But in general, in education, I think we just want better long-term planning. I think, that when I say sustainability, we have CalSTRS, we have CalPERS that are going to hit LCFF. There is no way we're going to require teachers to buy equipment to run programs that are going to benefit the training for students that are going to be going to these folks' businesses. I would not even advocate for that, and I am the biggest CTE advocate. We will choose teachers always over equipment and facilities and so forth. I get that. I think that the big piece for all of us is we've got to talk about sustainability. We've got to talk about long-term planning. It can't be, here's a 3-year cycle. I'm sitting on $6 million. Thank you. We're looking at another 2 to 3 million next year.
Yeah.
Thank you. And what happens 10 years from now? I have no view of the future at all.
Yeah, I think part of it has to do with giving districts the tools to make their own decisions, right? So I think we both agree that we ought to repeal this reserve cap that was put on districts. Yeah. That really does jam up their ability to do long-term planning financially. I think that for better or for worse, I think that local communities, those districts that are finding long-term sustainability plans, are actually stepping up themselves to help the local school districts. City Santa Monica, for example, now has a joint use agreement with a very generous subsidy that's given from the city directly to the school district, ostensibly in return for public use of school facilities, but it's basically a subsidy because they understand how grotesquely underfunded the schools have been. Schools can obviously put parcel taxes on the ballot, but cities can also do things like sales and use taxes, which actually only require a 50% vote, that would allow the city to kind of put more money into the school system. This new LCFF, which has been very redistributive, is also going to make it more difficult for wealthier school districts moving forward. We've got to figure out a longer-term plan. And I actually think that local communities, the smart ones, are stepping up and figuring out local solutions too to their financing.
We got time for one more. Go ahead.
Let's hear both and all. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Joan McGregor, trustee, 23 years, community college of the Canyons, and before that an elementary trustee for Sulphur Springs for 20 years. So public education is my hobby, if you will. It is my purpose in life. And I am really concerned because every single time I come up here, and it's been for 4 years, education has new names, new programs, new grants, and I agree with the sustainability. We need base funding that is adequate. I think we need local control. I think that we know what we need, just how we need to spend that money, not as much as the governor of Sacramento, but that was just an echo there. We have 60 certificate programs. We align with our high school district, and we work well together. But I want to go into one other thing, and that is money. It was brought up earlier before you came in the room, and that is in the release of the funds for the state bond. Our community has been so supportive of education and has passed elementary school bonds, high donations and other kinds of ways. But now we're reaching a point where we need that for a science lab building. We've been promising our community that that campus will get a science lab building, and here we are again without matching funds.
Yep.
Can you give us any insight into the governor's reasoning for this?
You know, from your lips to God's ears. I mean, I like to say that the governor is very mercurial. He was very opposed to the bond initially. I think that he will release the funds. I mean, he's going to release the funds, but once again, it's all part of the negotiation, right? It's all about
So pressure will help, right?
pressure. You got to pressure. You got to fight for it. I hate to say it, but that's kind of how the way he operates. And I suppose if I were to shoot, I mean, I would be choosing different things to hold the line on than he does, but I kind of get where he's coming from when he's got so many people coming at him. But this is an area where I